Compassionate and Revolutionary: Life and Innovations of Dr. Norman E. Borlaug. One man changed the course of human history and saved billions of lives, yet he is hardly known today. Norman Borlaug and his innovations in wheat and rice developments thoroughly aided poor farmers in third world countries. He taught agricultural scientists from Pakistan, India, and Mexico, who had no hope for change, to create wheat settlements and to assist farmers. The indirect effects of this revolution, widely known as the Green Revolution, are still happening today. Norman Borlaug was born in Iowa in 1914 to Clara and Henry Borlaug on the farm of his Norwegian immigrant grandparents. He was poor, yet never hungry. He worked on the farm as a child and attended a one-room schoolhouse. His work ethic and frugal childhood created a never-give-up attitude. In high school, Borlaug wrestled competitively. His coach, Dave Bartlema, was highly influential to Borlaug and always encouraged him to go 105%. Borlaug attended college at the University of Minnesota with a major in plant pathology. One of Borlaug's inspirations to fight world hunger was during the Great Depression, when he saw the effect of hunger on people. During college, while working in a restaurant, Borlaug met his future wife, Margaret G. Gibson. After college, Borlaug was offered a job with the U.S. Forestry Service. In a decision that perhaps changed his life, Borlaug attended a lecture by Dr. Elvin Stackman, a plant pathologist, and was immediately inspired. 9 years later, Borlaug was happily married and in a steady job with DuPont. He was offered a job with the Rockefeller Foundation to improve wheat yields in Mexico with Dr. Stackman and other wheat scientists. He risked everything and went. In Mexico, the yields were too low, meaning that there wasn't enough wheat per stalk, and the farmers couldn't get enough money for their crops. But more than that, a disease called rust fell over many wheat plants, and almost every year an epidemic would occur. Borlaug found a variety of rust-resistant wheat and breeded it with a high-yield variety. But there was too much wheat per stalk, and the stems were too thin, so they fell over in storms or wind. Borlaug then breeded it with Japanese semi-dwarf wheat, which had a thicker stem. Mexico was self-sufficient in exporting wheat by 1956. In the late 1960s, imminent famine was predicted to fall over India and the rest of the developing world. Borlaug wanted to ship his wheat to India and Pakistan, the two countries that were predicted to be hit the hardest by overpopulation and famine. But agronomists in Asia didn't hardly know their fields due to limited schooling. So Borlaug trained them in his fields in Mexico, inspiring them to teach in their home countries. In 3 years, Pakistan was self-sufficient in exporting wheat. In India, the results were much the same. The first year Borlaug's wheat was planted, yields rose 70%. By the next year, they rose 98%. After these outstanding results, other experiments began to take place. IRRI, or International Rice Research Institute, was developed by a colleague of Norman's. This was the start of the Green Revolution. In the 50s and 60s, a popular term was Red Revolution, the taking over of countries or territories by war. Borlaug's peaceful, meaningful, and ingenious movement needed a different name. The Green Revolution was coined. I spoke with Dr. Jack Fenwick of Colorado State University on how Borlaug really achieved such a great deal.
The Green Revolution was instrumental in agriculture because the first recognition that just increasing the grain capacity wasn't sufficient. Agriculturally, we said it takes a management plan. And Norman Borlaug figured out what is the management plan to increase the potential yield and what is required of the plant in order to achieve that capability.
This idea was what essentially started the Green Revolution. Previously, scientists had not fully understood this concept, and Borlaug brought it to life. In 1970, Borlaug was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. Current events during the Green Revolution. During the Green Revolution of the 50s and 60s, the Vietnam War was occurring. This was the most relevant occurrence because it took place in Asia, where Borlaug's Green Revolution was also happening. Therefore, there was much tension because the domino effect was predicted. If one country fell to communism, the surrounding countries would also. Borlaug's movement was peaceful and imposed change without war. This changed people's perspectives of the Vietnam War. Why did the Green Revolution occur? Many believe that Borlaug, in all his humble ways, was destined to change the world. But if it hadn't been for the Rockefeller Foundation and Dr. Stackman, Borlaug never would have gone to Mexico. There are many ifs, but I believe the Green Revolution occurred because of the Great Depression. Many middle-class people hadn't experienced hunger before. After the Depression, crash programs were embarked upon in hope that discoveries would be made and could be applied to the U.S. in case of another depression. Long-term effects. As shown before, the short-term effects were increase in food production, education of foreign scientists, and most importantly, the Green Revolution, which led to advances in science and technology of other crops. But the long-term effects were equally as important. Because Borlaug established the CIMMYT, or International Maize and Wheat Improvement Center in Mexico, over the years, wheat improved greatly. Scientists from all over the world came to Mexico. This was significant because many people, including Borlaug himself, knew that he couldn't keep working forever. So this center continued research even after he left Mexico. Many more discoveries were made there. Unknown to many, Borlaug actually began Little League Baseball in Mexico. After his success with wheat in Mexico, Borlaug began to have more time to help out poverty-stricken families. This was important because he improved lives for many of the children and kept them out of trouble. These teams are prevalent today. This graph shows the advances in yields of wheat in select countries from 1950 to 2004. Here we can see that even after Borlaug's main wheat improvement was finished in the 60s, yields continued to rise steadily. This was another long-term effect, that yields continued to rise. Not only did Borlaug start the Green Revolution, he also inspired people around the world, which started the Blue Revolution, advanced water technology. This is still happening today. Another long-term effect was the continual use of Borlaug's technologies, even in the U.S. today.
We are using the technology and the information that led to our new modern-day wheats.
Finally, and possibly most importantly, after the Green Revolution, military conflict was slowed. This was because before the Green Revolution, governments were losing hope. They began using armed soldiers to prevent rebellion and economies were falling. But Borlaug, in his peaceful ways, showed that problems could be solved without war. This was extraordinarily revolutionary because it prevented wars to come and changed governments' ways of thinking. He protested against the high price of fertilizer compared to the low price of wheat. Consequences. A common myth is that Borlaug's modified wheat was the first GMO. This is not true because the first GMO was not created until 1973. There was one consequence, however, of the seemingly perfect revolution. When Borlaug's new wheat was brought over to India and Pakistan, it was distributed among many rural villages. The government regulated the price of fertilizer compared to the price of wheat, which meant the price of fertilizer went up because governments were paying more for wheat. But some rural towns had no roads or bridges, so Borlaug's wheat could not be distributed to them, and they were therefore paying more for fertilizer. But those towns were few and far between, and the positive effects outweighed the negative, and also, as time went on, roads were paved and bridges were built. Why does no one know who Norman Borlaug is? Considering that Norman Borlaug was credited for saving over 1 billion lives, it's a wonder hardly anyone recognizes his name. His visionary ways, innovative thinking, and humble demeanor are one of a kind. My theory to why Borlaug is so sporadically known is because in the United States, food shortages rarely occur. Unlike Africa, we aren't centered on the agricultural world. Many people believe that hunger is still a gargantuan problem, but without Norman Borlaug, India would be nowhere near where it is today. In conclusion, despite the fact that we today see hunger in developing countries as a widespread problem, Norman Borlaug and his innovations in wheat and rice technologies was extraordinarily revolutionary, not just in heightened food production, but also in reducing military conflict and teaching foreign scientists.